Hey everyone, welcome back to Bonsai Echo. I'm Jared. We're going to be working on this Engelmann Spruce today, doing a little bit of light styling on it in the form of an alpine tree. And what that's going to mean is very light wiring for this tree because I don't want to damage any of the older bark that is on some of these older branches. I'm not going to be actually wrapping wire around as is traditionally done in bonsai styles. I'm actually going to be using strictly guy wires and a little bit of directional pruning. This tree is pretty healthy. It's got a lot of nice buds here, a little bit further into the greenery than it had the previous year. It just had a year of nice rest. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on that. Guy wires I'm using are going to be very thin wire padded with some airline tubing, and you'll see me do this on my channel quite a bit when I'm working on trees style, just with these techniques of thin guy wire and pruning. I used to wrap a lot of wire around my branches, and I went through a ton of wire on this one when I first styled this. Turns out I didn't really like it all that much. I wanted a bit more of a natural sort of look, so I'll be going with that. Also, something very typical for what I do is I'll put an attachment point in the form of a screw directly into the trunk somewhere, which is what I'm going to do for lowering this first branch. And when I can, I put it into an old stub like I have here. Used to be a branch here, very thin one. Decking screw is what I'm using here, and I've just taken a Sharpie to the end of it to give it a dark color that wouldn't be able to be seen very well. The decking screw allows it to survive any of the sap, outdoor weather, all of that stuff that could deteriorate a uncoated screw. And then the cushioning actually goes around the wire. So I'll grab a small piece of wire, find a good attachment point, which for this one is right here. And then I'll give the wire enough holding power around this branch so that the wire doesn't fall off, but not so much that it's going to cut into the branch. So between the cushioning that it has and the light touch on it, it's going to be little to no wire scarring. And I didn't need to pull down too much. That's about all I wanted. So this branch, as you can see, it has sort of a downward angle, but the ends are going to swoop up. I'm going to be trimming a lot of this end back probably. That may actually get, yeah, I may direct these other branches just a little bit around, but I'll probably wind up leaving as much as I can, and then trimming for shape everything else. So I can do that because I let this tree get nice and healthy over last summer. This will go relatively quick. I'll go ahead and do a little trimming as I go, but most of it will happen after the buds break. This is a collected spruce. The previous owner had collected it sometime in the past. I wasn't there for the collection of this tree. I have very few collected trees in my collection, also known as Yamadori. I do have a lot of trees that were collected from locally, not from the mountains, so we couldn't call them Yamadori because Yama means mountain. Some people like to call those urban Dori. I live in an area that is not urban, so I don't call them urban Dori. I just call them collected trees. In any case, I use a lot of nursery stock or landscape grown stock. So that's an example of one branch. I'll continue to move up this tree and gently pull most of these branches into place. Little trimming here and there. It's not going to look super fancy when I'm done. By the end of next year, this is going to be a different looking tree. A lot of new growth on it. Some nice down and out swoops like trees naturally do. At least the trees that I see naturally do. It's not going to have really defined foliage pads like bonsai does. This will be more like an actual tree. Yep, we'll continue on. I don't even need to put guy wires on every single one of these branches because some of them are actually already in a pretty good spot according to the design I'm going after. Alright, at this point, I've done the guy wiring, I've done a little bit of trimming, and I'm at the point where I have some really thick branches up here at the top of the tree. And these have grown with the apical dominance of this tree, keeping on wanting to grow up high, has forced these upper branches to thicken a lot. It's not quite the look I'm going for, so some of these super thick ones like this one here, some of the ones below it are very long or very just out of place. I want these to be thinner. That's going to have to be rebuilt over time with hopefully some back budding in a lot of these places. I'm really hoping that as I get into the trimming functions of this tree, now that it's good and healthy, I'll start to see some tighter growth at the top. I don't want this to have a broad spreading top to it. I want it to be kind of tapering, actually tapering quite a bit. So yeah, if this was more of a traditional Japanese bonsai style tree, some of these branches might come out from up here. I'd probably clean up the trunk quite a bit more and expose some open areas, which could happen a little bit later in the future as I impart some age onto this tree, the appearance of age. But for right now, I actually want it to be pretty full. I want this to be a healthy looking tree that's growing up in high elevation up in the mountains. This is, as requested, something that's a little bit more local. This one was collected in Oregon, so it's a little bit more local to my Washington area. But definitely not specifically bonsai looking. The pot also not quite so bonsai looking. This is one by Randy Hoshaw. This is a kind of a rocky sort of form. Not quite a standard geometric shape. It's a, what is this, five-sided shape? 2, 4, 5-sided shape. So it's a similar color to a standard glazed pot, but very different. Looks like a rocky outcropping that just wasn't so gnarly looking. So yeah, it's a fun tree. Most of the work is going to happen during growing season for the rest of it. So that's bonsai for you. Not everything is an instant tree for bonsai. This one, this tree itself is, I don't know how old this tree is. That part actually doesn't really interest me quite so much as far as the actual age of the tree, because in order to get that, one of the more accurate ways is to cut it and count the rings, which doesn't really suit my aim for bonsai. I'm not so interested in killing the tree just to see what the age is. I'm really more interested in its future. So its future is, like I said, more pruning, more growing, trying to keep it healthy. The buds are already expanding on this, so I expect to see a really good spring pop of buds from this, and it's going to be really fun to start pruning it. In the alpine forms that I've seen, a lot of these top branches aren't bent strongly down. They actually do kind of come out and up in some of these trees. That could be contrary to what you've seen a lot of bonsai styled as an alpine tree. They will reach towards the light, and the tips will continue to reach up towards the light. So these ones that are up towards the top are the newest growth. They're going to have a lot of upright growth compared to the lower sections, which will have had many years of weight of snow on them. Well, cool tree. I'll update again as I get into the trimming portion of this, and that will happen in several months. Thanks again for joining me today. I'm Jared, you're on Bonsai Echo. Stay tuned for another episode of Slow Bonsai. Probably not anything that's going to be spectacular, but cumulative over time, they lead to really interesting results. And also show some of the trees that have been in bonsai for a long period of time, even since before my time. Thanks again.